Gutierrez, and I'm in my studio at home that I share with my partner in Villa Santa Cristo. And what I want to talk to you today is how to incorporate different materials. I want to talk about what you should be looking for, at least talk about what I would be looking for. And also, I'd like to take some time to talk about why I do certain things within my paintings. And hopefully you can get some tips and start looking at painting a little bit differently.
So before I actually start doing the workshop, I kind of want to take some time and explain the artwork that I'm making, and also explain why I'm doing certain moves within the painting. So this is a picture of my dog inside my studio. Back there you can see a lot of the paintings, and what I'm trying to do within my art practice is really just pay attention to a lot of the components that make up a painting, such as the materials, the ground, the surface, the structure. Not only that, but also the context in which the paintings are being made in, such as a studio. And what I'm trying to do within my artwork is take the viewer and also the artist, myself, into unfamiliar territory, or territory that we're not normally accustomed to. And by doing all these things, what I want the painting to do is to just capture and reflect some sort of truth, some sort of like honest reflection on the present. I hope it reflects what it means to be a painter today and the challenges that we have today. Whenever I make my sketchbooks, really there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. I kind of allow myself to have total freedom, and the reason why I want to do that is because I don't want to have any judgment on the actual sketches, on the preliminary ideas. I just want to be like an open source, or like a sponge, and just like allow any kind of influence to come in without any type of judgment. So I have a lot of different types of images, found images, repurposed and printed out images. I also have different sketches in there, precious sketches, and also really quick and experimental sketches. Sometimes I allow failures to happen in there, or my idea of what a failure is, and I repurpose it. And yeah, it's total freedom. Whether there's a concept behind it, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But really what I want to do is just expand my visual vocabulary with these. But the really cool thing that ended up happening while making these is that I allowed myself a lot of freedom with these, and some of that freedom ended up transferring over onto the paintings in terms of how do I approach materials, how do I approach the structure, how do I approach the surface. And also another thing that ended up happening while making these is that my aesthetic, my visual vocabulary started becoming more redefined in a very natural way. It wasn't at all forced. It was very intuitive, very much by chance, and I kind of love doing those things. I love developing artwork subconsciously, and mixing that up later on during the final process of actually finishing an artwork. And here I have these collaborations that I've been making with my partner, who also happens to be a painter. Her name is Nabila Santa Cristo, and we just make things, again, with no judgment, no concept behind it, and incorporating all different types of materials. Eventually, all these things somehow, end up making their way into my artwork. And again, I love it when, I end up doing these intuitive, playful things that somehow, find their way into my paintings. And here with this painting, now you can kind of start noticing how I'm taking ideas of constructing and deconstructing, about filtering, about repurposing images. It's still all the same, they're still there, but those ideas are being taken over to other components that make up a painting. Components such as the structure, ideas of like materials that you're using. Really, it just opened up the door for me to expand my idea of what a painting can be or what a painting is. And I also started really questioning my concepts, my initial concepts. At times I'm poking fun of myself for, having a very romantic idea of a painting, or wanting to tackle like a very hard subject. I'm really into this idea of like capturing the process, these like kind of like intuitive moves. They're just as important as the image, and I feel like capturing them just makes total sense to me. And then I started taking these ideas over to other paintings, attaching older paintings over to like newer paintings, and really thinking about like what is like missing from the painting. Whenever I do have that feeling, I start looking around my studio, really like looking at like the materials that are just lying around, and anything is possible. Again, going back and taking all these ideas that happen when I'm making a sketch, all these like, chances and risks that I take during the sketchbook, going back and like incorporating them over to the painting. And I also think like, the materials that you're using, a lot of the times they have conceptual meaning behind them. And I think it's important to really start paying attention to those things. I'm always reflecting on the process, the challenges that happen when making a painting, and I feel like incorporating a material that has been with you for so long, that has been with you so long, just makes total sense to me. And also, I like to incorporate materials that have some kind of like meaning or concept behind my own life. Aside from being a painter, I do like many other things, and I think it's important to kind of like to not run away or to hide any of those things. I think if I'm really interested in capturing what it means to be a painter today, I think I would have to somehow acknowledge all those other things that I am, aside from being a painter. And I think it's important, to talk about these things, because I feel like I'm not the only painter out there that is doing painting part-time. I think it's a thing of, of the times where not a lot of people can afford to be a full-time painter. And I think by acknowledging that, what ends up happening is you end up making a painting for your time, meaning that because of the circumstances that we're living in, this is the type of painting that that comes out. These are the types of materials that we're using to make paintings, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I like it when art and painting takes us into those like, shaky new experiences. And finally, with this last painting, I wanted to talk about again, really all those components that make up a painting, such as process, structure, material, all of that. It's within this painting the same way that it's in this painting. The only difference is that I'm not using an image, but the ideas are still there. And again, this goes back to what I'm trying to do, which is really expand my approach expand my expectations of what a painting can be.
So when you want to start incorporating materials into your paintings, typically you don't want to force it. Um, what I tend to do is just take a look around, your own setting and start building up kind of like a library of materials that you can possibly use within your art pieces. Normally, if you just start collecting pieces that are around you throughout your day, most of the times you'll find that there's some kind of connection that you have with the pieces. So for instance, if you're taking some materials from either your daily life or your job or your school or some place like that, naturally there's going to be some connection that you have with that piece. This kind of connection is always really important to note and jot down, because you can always bring back these conceptual ideas and these conceptual connections to your art pieces later on. So what I want to show you today is not exactly a finished piece or how to finish and complete a piece, but what I want to show you is how to set it up, how to incorporate different materials, what you should be looking at, and how you should be approaching it, or at least the way that I approach it. So I do have some examples for you. Over here on the left, this is a piece of a crate that I broke down and I gessoed, and then I painted on top of. One thing that I wanted to pay attention to is the small little details that this crate offers me that a regular canvas wouldn't offer me. For instance, these little nails that are sticking out, the not so perfect rectangle that it creates, also these 3D elements, right? These kinds of things are the exact opportunities that regular canvas wouldn't offer me, but I do have them here and I can exploit them if I want to. Another thing too is that connection that a crate has, that a canvas doesn't have. I think when you start really thinking about these things, you start really thinking about process and how that process can reflect in your artwork, right? There's a story behind this crate of like where I found it, also the connections that I have to it in my life. Another piece I wanted to show you is this piece here that I have halfway done and set up for me. The way I put it together is I just grabbed the board and I went ahead and I started gluing and screwing in these materials. This over here is, I have two different types of foam. I have expandable foam, and then I have just regular packing and shipping foam. And then I have this plastic that I had lying around, and also this bubble wrap that I incorporated. There's a couple of stuff that I wanted to pay attention to while making this. For instance, using the expandable foam as a abstract line going back and forth, and how that line creates a pattern throughout the whole picture plane. Another thing too is, again, ideas of repetition and rhythm, right? See this plastic over here that gets repeated over and over again? That, along with the line, starts creating some kind of rhythm. Another thing too is how the picture plane gets broken up. For instance, this piece over here once belonged to this foam piece, but I didn't like how flat the picture plane was. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up cutting the foam piece and then moving it just a little bit over the edge over here so that it overlaps. And then that breaks up that flat picture plane, right? Now I have an actual 3D picture plane versus a flat one. So those are some of the things that I wanted to think about. Another thing too that really stood out to me was the color. I really love these bright colors. Naturally, I try to, I gravitate towards really bright colors. But anyways, that's more about my aesthetics. Those are things that I look for. So here I have another painting. Again, I'm using the expandable foam. And then I have some cardboard that's used for shipping. And then I also have discarded old paintings that I've made with my students in the class that I'm teaching. And you might be wondering, why do I use a lot of foam and why do I use a lot of shipping materials? Well, I worked a lot in as an art handler, and I also worked a lot in shipping, and so I'm very comfortable with these materials. These materials are ones that I've been working with for years, and so it just seems very natural for me to incorporate it into my art pieces. I feel like they have some connection to who I am, or at least who I was once in my life. And I love when art kind of does that, when you make connections to life with materials versus making connections to life with images. For me, I feel like this is more straightforward than if I were to use like an image. But anyways, what really got me excited about this piece is also the collaboration I did with my students in making these pieces. I like the idea of using like experimental painting sketches, or considered, I guess, failed attempts at painting, and giving them a new life. I just love how you can repurpose an image or a move within that you made in an old painting and repurpose it into a new painting. And again, like I said, give it like a new life. But I just kind of want to show you how I put it together. So I cut these pieces up, these old paintings. I cut only the pieces that I felt that were interesting, and I discarded everything else. So I had a bunch of little like rectangles that then I decided to make a huge square out of, almost like a frame, and then I stapled them together. After that, I grabbed this expandable foam and I laid it down and made a square out of it, and then I put this this frame that I made out of old paintings, and I squished it in there. And then I decided, well, I wanted something in the middle too, right? I didn't want it to just be these old paintings. And so I grabbed this cardboard and I did the same thing. I created a frame out of expandable foam, and then I squished it on there. And then one thing that really stood out to me with this cardboard is how it curves in and out, and it's very flexible. I want to use that flexibility, that curviness that this cardboard has. I didn't want to erase those things, and so what I decided to do was also use expandable foam in the center, so that it creates kind of like this lumpy, curvy texture. And then that's pretty much it. From here on out, what I would do is I will revisit my sketchbooks and then start looking for images or different other painting moves that I like, and I'll put them in here. I'll let the concept kind of come naturally, but already I have this connection to life with the material. So it's not like I'm starting off with nothing. I'm starting off with something. This ends up becoming like the foundation for the concept. So the next thing I want to do is I want to share with you how I would start a painting from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and look around my room and grab some materials. Again, these materials should have some kind of connection to your life. So go ahead and start scavenger hunting around your room, around your house, around your work area, and then come back with all those materials, okay? Because we're going to build one together. Hey everyone, I'm back. So I looked around my house, and one thing that I found was this awesome cardboard. I've been getting a lot of packages through Amazon, and I found this cardboard in there, and I really liked it, and I felt like I should incorporate it into an art piece. I don't know how I'm going to use it yet, but I know I want to use it as a painting piece. Another thing that I found is this blue shipping foam. I ship a lot of paintings, a lot of artworks, so I always have one kind of in the house. Alright everyone, so I have my cardboard over here. And then I have my cut foamed up piece. And right off the bat, one thing that I noticed is that the side here is way more interesting than the front. I normally try to stay away from very flat surfaces. I always try to find a different kind of texture to incorporate into like the painting. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to search for the texture that this cardboard has. Right off the bat, the first thing that I'm thinking about is taking off this top layer over here. So now I have this really cool honeycomb texture that this cardboard has that I can totally use to paint on top of, and I think I will. So next thing I want to do is I want to try to figure out how to incorporate this foam into this piece. Some of the color kind of, dies out whenever it's by itself. I think if I double it up, the color pops out more, and I totally want to do that. So I'm gonna try to figure out how can I incorporate this into this cardboard. So I think something like this will work for me. I love how it creates a natural frame when I set it as the back, as like the ground. And I also like how I can how these little edges here stand out more with this kind of like foam as the background. So the next step is to just try to figure out how can I attach these two pieces together. So I have a couple options of how to attach this. I can either glue it together, I can use this staple gun, or I can sew it on here. I think I'll go with the easiest route, which is using this staple. But before I go ahead and staple these two things together, what I really want to start thinking about now is the strength and the durability that this is going to have. This is very fragile, and I want to give it a little bit more support. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to attach a heavy set of paper onto the back of this, so that when I staple it, it becomes a little bit more durable. It's still a very fragile piece, but it'll hold up a little bit longer. Awesome, so there you go. Next step to do is to now just start thinking about what I would like to gesso over. Now, I don't think I'm going to be painting over this foam, but I know for sure I'm going to be painting over this material over here, the cardboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some gesso. I use just this Jerry's gesso. You can also get some gesso from Blick, but this is the one that I have in my house. So anyways, what I would do is now I would just gesso this material over here, let it dry. Once it's gessoed, you can go ahead and start thinking about what you want to paint on top of this. And there you go. It's very simple. Remember, same rules still apply to this as any other painting. Same ideas of elements and principles, they still apply to this, okay? So awesome. Hope you enjoyed.